This was supposed to be a good thing, a gift. My girlfriend's parents let us use their cabin for our anniversary last month. I think they bought it at an estate sale a few years ago. It's deep in the woods, no neighbors, no Wi-Fi, and the cell service is a joke. Perfect for us. We just wanted to disconnect for a weekend. The place was rustic, but clean. It smelled like pine and dust. On the mantelpiece, tucked between a kerosene lamp and a stack of old magazines, was a guestbook. It was a thick, leather-bound volume with yellowed pages. Anna, my girlfriend, loves that kind of stuff. She opened it immediately. The first entries were from the 70s. Happy families on fishing trips, couples on romantic getaways. The handwriting was loopy and cheerful. The kids loved the lake. Perfect escape from the city. We'll be back. We spent the first evening reading them out loud, laughing at the dated slang. It was charming. Then we found the first strange entry. It was from 1988. The handwriting was different. It was small, spidery, and looked like it had been written in a hurry. The nights are too long here, it said. The woods are too close. I keep hearing things. A scratching sound that moves around the walls. He says it's just branches, but it's not. It feels like something is trying to find a way in. I want to go home. It wasn't signed. We just stared at it for a minute. Someone had a bad trip, I said, trying to make a joke. Anna didn't laugh. She just closed the book. Later that night, I was woken up by a noise. A dry, scraping sound. It came from outside, near the back of the cabin. I lay perfectly still, listening. It was rhythmic. Scrape, drag, scrape. An animal, I told myself. A raccoon or a porcupine. It went on for about a minute, then stopped. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. The next morning, Anna was quiet. I found her with the guestbook open again. Look, she said, her voice low. She pointed to another entry, this one from 1995. Heard it again last night. It was on the roof, this time. I hate the windows in this place. It feels like you're in a fishbowl. This one was also unsigned. We started looking through the book more carefully. Every 5 or 6 years, there was another one. An entry written in that same panicked, rushed tone. They all mentioned the same things. A scratching sound, the feeling of being watched, and a strange fixation on the windows. The last one we found was just a single sentence, scribbled diagonally across a page from 2011. It knows our names. I'd had enough. It was starting to feel less like a fun historical record and more like a collection of bad omens. I took the book from Anna. This is ridiculous, I said. We're letting a bunch of ghost stories ruin our weekend. To prove my point, I grabbed a pen, flipped to the next blank page, and wrote in my most confident handwriting, Anna and I are having a wonderful time for our anniversary. The only scary thing here is the lack of cell service. I signed both our names at the bottom. Anna was upset. Why would you do that? She asked. I told her it was just a book, that we were making our own happy memory, not buying into someone else's paranoia. That night, the scratching started almost as soon as we turned the lights off. It wasn't faint this time. It was loud, insistent. It wasn't in one place. It was everywhere at once. On the walls, the roof, the floorboards beneath us. Sounded like a dozen animals, all trying to claw their way in. I couldn't pretend it was branches anymore. I got up and checked the door. The deadbolt was thrown. I looked through the peephole and saw nothing but blackness. The scraping stopped. I stood there in the living room, my heart pounding in the sudden, absolute silence. My eyes fell on the guestbook, still sitting open on the coffee table. I don't know why, but I walked over to it. I looked at the panicked entry from 1988, the one about the scratching. For the first time, I noticed, on the page right before it, a happy, cheerful entry. It was from a family on a fishing trip. I read the names they signed at the bottom. Then I flipped back to the terrified, unsigned entry. It wasn't unsigned. At the very bottom, almost torn through the page, were the same names. My blood went cold. I started flipping back and forth. A happy entry from a newlywed couple in '94. 2 pages later, the terrified entry from '95 about the roof and the windows. The same names. A cheerful family vacation in 2010. A few pages later, the scribbled scrawl from 2011. It knows our names, same family. It's a logbook. It's a sequence. I'm writing this on my phone. The battery is at 4%. The scratching hasn't started again, but I don't think it will. I keep looking at the last entry in the book. My entry. My confident, stupid words. My name and hers. The page after it is blank and clean. It feels like it's waiting. I just heard a single, sharp tap on the glass of the window right behind me. My grandfather left me his cabin. I hadn't seen him in over a decade, so when the lawyer called, I was surprised. He wasn't a warm man. My only memories of him are of a quiet, stern figure who smelled of sawdust and coffee. The cabin was his whole world, a small, hand-built box in the middle of 100 acres of pine trees. He died there. The official report said he fell off the roof while cleaning the gutters, an accident. I drove up last weekend to see the place for myself. It was exactly as I remembered. Dark wood, a stone chimney, and an unnerving number of windows. Inside, it was a museum of his life. Everything was coated in a thin layer of dust. My job was to sort through his things. Old tools, stacks of farmers' almanacs, fishing gear. In his bedroom closet, on the top shelf, I found a shoebox. Inside were about 24 cassette tapes. Each one had a small, neat label on it with just a date written in my grandfather's blocky script. They were all from the same month, October of 2004. I found an old boombox in the kitchen, and, out of curiosity, I put one in. I pressed play, hissing. Then, The sound of wind through pine trees. Some birds. That was it. I fast-forwarded a bit. It was just an hour of ambient woodland noise. I figured he was into nature recordings. A weird but harmless hobby. I put in the next tape, October 13th, 04. More of the same. Wind. Birdsong. But this time, after a few minutes, there was something else buried deep in the recording. A faint, rhythmic sound. Thump. Thump. It sounded like an axe hitting wood, but far away, maybe a mile or more. It continued for about 10 minutes and then stopped. The next few tapes were the same. Each day, the thump, thump, thump would start after a few minutes of ambient silence. But I started to notice something. Each day, the sound was a tiny bit louder, a little clearer. By the tape labeled October 18th, 04, the sound had changed. It was sharper now. It wasn't the soft thud of an axe splitting wood. It was a hard, distinct knock, like someone rapping their knuckles on a solid oak door. There are no other cabins for miles. I told myself I was being stupid, letting my imagination run away with me. It was just a weird project my grandfather had, documenting something. I should have stopped listening. I should have just thrown the box away. But I couldn't. I had to know what was on the last tape. On the tape, dated October 22nd, 04, a new sound appeared. After the knocking stopped, there was a long silence. Then, a quiet rustling. It sounded like footsteps, shuffling slowly through dry leaves. But it didn't sound like one person walking. It was too scattered, the cadence all wrong. The footsteps circled the microphone, first from the left speaker, then to the right. Close, then far, then it stopped. I found the last tape at the bottom of the box, October 27th, 04. The day before he died. My hands were shaking a little when I put it in the boombox. I pressed play. Silence. No wind. Just the low hiss of the magnetic tape. I waited. 1 minute. 2. Nothing. I leaned in close, turning the volume dial all the way up. I put my ear right against the speaker's dusty grill, straining to hear anything at all. And I heard it. The sound of my own breathing, a quiet, shaky inhale and exhale. I froze, pulling my head back. I heard the scuff of my shoe on the floorboard through the speaker. I heard the faint rustle of my own jacket as I moved. It wasn't a recording from the past. The boombox was in record mode. The play button must have been stuck down with it. It had been recording me the whole time I was in here. A wave of relief washed over me, so strong it made me dizzy. It was just a broken old machine. That's all. I laughed, a short, nervous bark of a sound. The laugh echoed back at me from the speakers. It was a soft, dry whisper right next to the microphone. It wasn't my voice. It said, "There you are." Last fall, I desperately needed a break from the city. You know the feeling, right? It's constant noise, endless emails, and the pressure to always be on. So, I found this amazing deal online for a remote cabin deep in the woods. The pictures looked incredibly rustic little place, surrounded by miles of untouched nature. It was exactly what I needed. I booked it for a long weekend, packed my bags, and hit the road, excited for some peace and quiet. The drive itself was an adventure. The paved road eventually turned to gravel, and then to a narrow dirt track that wound deeper and deeper into the forest. By the time I arrived, my phone had lost all signal. Perfect, I thought. Total disconnection. The cabin looked just like the photos, maybe even a bit more charming in person. There was a small porch with a rocking chair and a stack of firewood ready by the door. The owner, an older guy named Elias, had left the key under the mat with a note that just said, "Make yourself at home." The first night was pure bliss. I built a fire, read a book, and listened to the sounds of the woods. It was so quiet, almost unnervingly so. The next morning, I went for a long hike. The air was crisp, the colors were stunning, and I felt all the city stress just melting away. Off. The rocking chair on the porch, which I'd left facing the woods, was now turned to face the front door. I brushed it off. Maybe it was the wind. But it was a heavy chair, and there hadn't been any wind. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing faint noises outside. A twig snapping here, a rustle in the leaves there. I told myself it was just animals, but my heart was pounding. Then I heard it, a soft, rhythmic tapping. Tap, 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 tap. It was coming from the back of the cabin, right on the window of the spare bedroom. I froze, every muscle in my body tensed. I grabbed the heavy fireplace poker, my hands shaking, and crept towards the back room. Peeking through a crack in the door, I saw nothing but darkness outside the window. The tapping had stopped. The next day, I was on edge. I decided to cut my trip short and leave that afternoon. As I was packing my things, I dropped my car keys. They slid under an old, dusty area rug in the living room. When I lifted the corner of the rug to get them, I saw it. A trapdoor. It wasn't in the online listing. There was a small, rusted metal ring to pull it open. My gut screamed at me to just grab my keys and get out. But my curiosity, or maybe my stupidity, got the better of me. I had to know what was down there. With a loud creak, I pulled the heavy door open. A wave of musty, cold air hit me. A steep wooden ladder led down into a small, dark cellar. I used my phone's flashlight to look down, and my blood ran cold. The cellar wasn't for storage. The walls were covered with photographs, dozens of them. They were pictures of people, all of them candid shots, taken without them knowing. People sleeping in the cabin's bed, reading on the porch, eating at the table. They were all guests, and in the corner of the cellar, I saw a small pile of personal belongings, wallet, a single earring, a driver's license. Then my eyes landed on the last photo, pinned right in the center of the wall. It was a picture of me, taken the night before, asleep in the bed. The timestamp on the photo was 3:17 a.m. My host, Elias, hadn't just left the key. He had never left at all. I didn't even bother closing the trapdoor. I scrambled out of that cabin, jumped in my car, and drove like a maniac until I found a cell signal and could call the police. I never looked back, but sometimes when it's too quiet, I can still hear that tapping. Thanks for listening, and remember to be careful where you stay.